We are creatures of desire. What we most desire is meaning. What makes us suffer most is a lack of meaning.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Marital therapist, author, and communications trainer Andrew G. Marshall invites guests from all walks of life to discuss what makes life meaningful.
Hello, I'm Andrew G. Marshall. Welcome to The Meaningful Life. We're available on Apple, Spotify, Podbean, and wherever you find your podcasts. There is an everyday superpower that can help you heal yourself, strengthen your relationships, and amplify your purpose. It's called empathy. Whether you're curious about becoming more empathetic or can't sleep because you're overthinking other people's problems at 3 a.m. in the morning, my witness today has practical wisdom to help you. Judith Orloff, MD, is the New York Times bestselling author of The Genius of Empathy, Practical Skills to Heal Your Sensitive Self, Your Relationships, and the World, and the classic self-help book, The Empath Survival Guide. Her upcoming children's book, The Highly Sensitive Rabbit, is about a caring rabbit who learns to embrace the gifts of sensitivity through the kindness of loving animals. Dr. Orloff is a psychiatrist, an empath, and an intuitive healer, and is on the UCLA Psychiatric Clinical Faculty. So let's start off by sorting out what's the difference between being an empath and being empathetic.
Great question. I'm a psychiatrist in Los Angeles, and I have a private practice. I specialize in working with highly sensitive people and empaths. And so an empath is somebody who is sensitive and open and has the ability to connect to others, but they tend to have some challenges that they need to really work with in order to feel at peace, in order to have a happy life. And one of the challenges is they tend to be an emotional sponge, where I could be standing next to you if I wasn't protected, if I wasn't grounded. I'd be standing next to you, feeling you and taking on whatever emotions you're having, both positive and more difficult emotions. And that causes empaths to get very tired and also take on other people's illnesses, their anxiety, their problems, because there are no boundaries going on. So the empaths have lots of gifts, intuition being one of them, connecting to nature, connecting to animals, being able to love with all your heart. But it has challenges that you have to work with. And I do. Every day of my life, I work with, all the grounding techniques. So I can enjoy being an empath. I love being an empath. I wouldn't want to be anything else. But it does have challenges for everyone on the path, especially new people who are awakening as empaths. Some people say, oh my God, it's a curse in the beginning. And I can see how it's perceived as a curse. Certainly as a child, I felt like it was a curse because I had no idea what I was doing or what was happening. I was just very sensitive and taking on a lot of people's emotions. But if you work with the strategies that we're going to be talking about today, from the Genius of Empathy and the Empath Survival Guide, you'll get strong and you'll be able to, feel powerful with your empathy and not worried about being drained everywhere you go.
So what I'm thinking is that maybe if you're an empath, you're not quite certain which are your emotions and which are, say, for example, your partner's emotions or your mother's emotions. Am I getting that right?
Yes, you are. It's sometimes hard because unless you're totally attuned to yourself and today I'm feeling, full of life and happy, and then you go into a meeting and suddenly your energy is bottomed out and you wonder what happened. Most likely it was the interaction in the room.
So that's being an empath. What is empathy then?
Empathy is the beautiful quality of being able to resonate with others and feel where they're coming from. And it's regular empathy, which is the most gorgeous phenomena, doesn't have the problems of absorbing other people's emotions. It's just you care for your fellow human, you care for your loving animals, you care for, little children, you care for the earth. It's, I feel one with feeling. And it's kind of the antidote to loneliness, because you feel the connection with all sentient beings and the earth itself.
And how did you personally learn to differentiate between the two? Because I think it's really important to be able to do that.
Yes. Well, I was kind of forced into it. And when I was a teenager, before that, my parents said, never mention another one of they said predictions again or intuitions again in our house. Because I would say things like, I don't feel comfortable around this friend. He feels like it's going to hurt. He's going to hurt himself. That was one example. And they go, what? And that's just what I felt. And then he actually made a suicide attempt. This was when I was very young. And after that episode, they said, never mention another one of your intuitions again at home. So I grew up believing there was something wrong with me. And my mother said I was too sensitive and I had to get stronger skin. And I'm not allowed to talk about it anymore. So where did that leave me? A child in the 60s. So I got very heavily involved with drugs at that point to try and run from my empathy, my sensitivities. I just wanted to be normal and fit in with my friends and go and party. And it wasn't like that for me. So my parents finally, after a big car accident that I got in where I went over a cliff in a car in Topanga Canyon, my parents forced me to go see a psychiatrist. And, I fought and hated him, and he turned out to be fabulous. It was a blessing in my life to have met this incredible man who was able to see beyond all of my, rebellion and anger, and say, for you to be happy, you're going to need to embrace this, and you need to learn how to do it. And you could keep fighting it, but it's not going to do any good. And so he was my first mentor. For many years, Jim was my mentor. I wrote about it in Second Sight. My first book was my journey through my childhood as an empath and how I ran from it. And then, how I had people in my life, throughout my life, and perhaps you too, and everyone who's listening, that people, they're guides that come if you could be open to them. You don't push them away. And so, he was my first guide and kind of put me on the right path of integration rather than getting angry at who I was.
I wonder how many people have had their parents tell them you're too sensitive. Now, I'm not an empath, but my parents felt that I was too sensitive. And in fact, in many ways, empathy sort of doesn't get a particularly good reputation. It's sort of the idea that it might sort of hold you back.
Yeah, that's because most people don't know the difference between healthy empathy and unhealthy empathy. And so it's chapter 6 in The Genius of Empathy, which I think is probably the most popular chapter in the book, because it goes through how to have healthy empathy and what unhealthy empathy is. And unhealthy empathy involves overgiving in a codependent way so that you're caring more about the other person than you are about yourself, and you're stepping over boundaries of places you don't belong. You need to stay in your own path and give other people the dignity of their own path and not try and fix them and help them and overdo everything. And so you're exhausted and they're resentful.
So let's work out, what is the genius of empathy?
Genius of empathy is it connects you with love, and it connects you with all of life. And it connects you with everything you've been yearning for, really. It connects you to what you want and what you love the most. And the genius of empathy is also telling you what's not safe, who's not safe, what direction not to go towards. If you get, I'm empathizing with them, but I'm not liking what I'm feeling. I had one patient who went into a business meeting and he really wanted to make this deal, but he walked in and he just got a terrible feeling about this man, and that he might be an embezzler or something like that, but he didn't feel his money was safe with him. So he, did a very brave thing and declined the offer, which was very hard because it was financially lucrative. And it turns out the guy was just a nightmare where he, stole money and he put it here and he put it there, and the whole business fell apart. So he listened. But his empathy can be positive, and it could be, stay away. It could be stay away also, that you want to listen to in your life. You don't want to just get into a fantasy land. A lot of empaths, especially in the area of love and relationships, get into fantasy land about narcissists, where let's say somebody has been alone for a while and they're wanting a partner, and here comes this beautiful person who tells them everything they want to hear, who's very charismatic, who's very, seemingly empathic, faux empathy, because they present themselves as false front in the beginning. And then they get involved. Even with my patients where I've said, take a look at this, go slow. And they're off and running. A lot of times they don't listen to me. But I stay with them, and they go through this painful relationship with a narcissist. And finally, if they're lucky, they get out of it and they can start over. But they go into fantasy about relationships if they become overwhelmed by the feelings involved.
And it is actually really rather difficult to listen to your intuition, because when I first came to Germany and I was looking for therapy space, I found some in a reasonably good building. It was in a place that I wanted. It was available. And my intuition said to me, the person who I'm renting the space off is going to be trouble. I can feel us easily falling out. But I sort of, number one, needed it, the space. And number two, I'm afraid to say, a bit of the fantasy, I can cope with this difficult person. And of course I couldn't. I mean, fortunately, I didn't have a client in the room at the time, but there was something that upset her, and she just burst into my room without knocking or anything else like that. It could have been in the middle of a session, and just was shouting and doing all sorts of crazy things. And it happened literally straight away. My intuition had been right, but I hadn't been able to listen to myself. What advice would you give me for dealing with those sort of situations in the future?
I think it gives you really wonderful guidance, because you have to learn the hard way. What happens when you don't listen to your empathic self or your intuition, and what happens? I mean, I've not listened many times in my life, and clearly every time I don't listen, something bad happens. So this has been proven to me. I'm a little stubborn. So it took me a little while to learn this, but now I know that if I don't listen, if I'm empathizing with someone and I'm getting, I'm not comfortable with this, or if I get an intuition, stay away, I better listen to it. Otherwise, I'm asking for trouble.
So for people who are being told by their partners they're not empathetic enough, what advice would you give them for increasing empathy?
Well, it depends if their partners want to increase empathy. You can't force your partner to increase empathy. If you're with a narcissist who has a very limited capacity for empathy, you have to lower your expectations. You can't turn a full-blown narcissist into an empathic person. It doesn't happen that way. What you can get is better behavior. What you can get is boundaries and ways to handle situations, but you probably won't get the love that you want. So you need to have realistic expectations with people in terms of who you're dealing with. If you have a partner who, let's say, wasn't raised in an emotionally nurturing environment, they're not a narcissist, but they're interested in learning about empathy, the best way for you to teach them is to begin to speak your needs and present it to the person and say, sometimes I need some alone time. I get overwhelmed and I need to go off on my own. It would be so wonderful if you could respect that and not knock on the door and not hover and try like that exercises of, this is what I need and this is how you can have empathy with me. And to give a lot of positive reinforcement for that and see how they do with it. It's like a practice session, or what does empathy mean? It means listening to your heart. It means opening your heart. And sometimes people are very much in their heads. If they're in the tech industry, if they're used to overthinking things and going to the mind for all solutions rather than also dropping down to the heart, you can teach your partner, just simple meditations where you could breathe together. You could just sit across from each other and just do the sacred thing we do all the time, all day long, which is breathe. And do it together so you can feel the connection Sometimes you have to go slow with people when you're educating them about empathy. Sometimes people get negative messages about empathy growing up, and they're taught it's a weakness. They're taught it's going to let people take advantage of you. Perhaps you were bullied in the schoolyard if you were too sensitive or empathic, or like to read poetry instead of doing, the gaming. So, you have to look at what the history is and what the wounds are with empathy. But what I want to really emphasize that I'm not saying to over feminize yourself, in terms of just being in the feminine aspect of yourself. You need to be both feminine, masculine, and whole in order to empathize. Because I interviewed Quincy Jones for one of my books, Positive Energy, and he's one of my heroes. I mean, he's really the guy. He got it. He said, I don't do anything without the goosebumps. He goes, there's no point. He listened to his intuition in everything he did. I don't do anything without the goosebumps. And that's pretty much how I want to live. Because why? Why do it? Why do it if there's no energy there? But if you can feel with your empathy, sometimes what he meant by that, if someone's listening and you don't know, it's sometimes you can have an idea or think of, maybe I'll move here, and you get all these goosebumps coming over your body. And it's like, it's a happy feeling. And it's an affirmation of this might be good for you.
You can sometimes get a picture as well. I'm now in an entirely different space. In fact, a space that I own myself. And I was looking for somewhere to live, not somewhere to work. But I walked into the room and I just saw myself seeing clients in this room. I thought, this is a fabulous room to counsel in. And it was just an instantaneous feeling. And this time, fortunately, I listened to it. And, I've never been happier in a space for working than I am today.
Oh, how wonderful. Because you can feel empathy for spaces and intuition for spaces. When people look for new homes, I always encourage them to try and feel the energy in the place. It could look good and be all set up perfectly, but, it might not feel good. So a space has to feel good. And whether a space feels good or not has a lot to do with the previous people and the history of the house and also the feng shui of how it's built. So what I'm suggesting in the genius of empathy, and I mean genius, is to apply it to the most practical things in life. Looking for a house, looking for an office, dating, finding a job, but really making it a value that's important to you. Not just something that you do occasionally, but something that you revere. And that might be too big a leap for you now, but it's something I feel that this ability we have, this ability for me to empathize with you and to not get in your space when I do it and, have very good boundaries when I'm empathizing with you. And when you do it with me, you do it with your patients. This is a very beautiful aspect of humanity. And we don't get to see that aspect too often these days, at least in the public arena. We get to see the worst of humanity. And if you want to be someone different than that, this is a value that can stay strong and true throughout your entire life. It's something you can feel good about. People need to feel good about themselves. And who you are as a person will help you do that. When you listen to yourself, there's a chapter in The Genius of Empathy on self-empathy. When in the middle of the night, you're beating yourself up because of some decision, instead of doing that, you take a breath, you pause, and you say, I'm going to be kind to myself right now. I'm going to stop this beating, and I'm going to say things like, to my amazement, this situation will work out beautifully, and I don't have to obsess on it, or something like that to, get the positive energy going in yourself and not, it's a form of self-abuse is when you beat yourself up and self-loathing. Many people have that, so don't get upset if that's you. It's just something to work with. I have a meditation teacher, and he says that spiritual progress is when you beat yourself up a little bit less each day. So you can lower your expectations with this, but do make progress. Yes, you want to go towards the heart. You want to go always towards the heart. That will be good. It doesn't mean you make impulsive decisions from the heart. It just means that you consider the heart and the head when you're deciding something. And I want to emphasize the two, the analytic mind and the heart and intuition. They all go together because we're multifaceted people. We're humans. We have all these capacities. We're not just this or just that, as people tend to, think they're only one thing, and they're not. You're not. You're many things.
So should you have empathy if your family are treating you badly?
What kind of empathy are you referring to?
Well, that, for example, the sort of empathy that says, I understand you're having a hard time, that sort of kind of empathy. But yet, if you are thinking too much about them, you're wide open. So how do you find that balance between, understanding why people are being nasty and actually letting them walk all over you?
Well, I don't generally recommend that you allow people to walk all over you. The point isn't to be a doormat. Okay. There are all kinds of families. Let's say you have an abusive family and they put you down and they tear you apart. They embarrass you in front of others. Whatever your family does that's negative, you could bring it up with them and say, it's really hurting my feelings when you do this. So, I'd appreciate it if you could stop. And most of the time they can't stop because it's an abusive, dysfunctional family pattern. And so when I work with patients like that, what that means is that, I work with them on setting limits and boundaries with the family and not subjecting themselves to abuse. I never recommend going into situations where someone's going to be abused and to make excuses to get out and to limit, as painful as it might be, you want to limit your time with them and not get stuck in family dinners, for 3 hours where they're saying, negative things. Oh, you're doing this. Families can be so nasty. Not all families, of course, but you have an abusive, dysfunctional network going on in a family, and you have an empath or a sensitive person who's the scapegoat. You have to really take care of yourself in that environment if you so choose to go into it. I feel pretty strongly about that you don't subject yourself to that. And then I always get asked, but what if you're living with your parents? What if you're the caregivers and they're nasty and horrible? That's a little bit different because being a caregiver a lot of times is a choice. As I've gone through this decision with many of my patients who, it comes down to, the mother was abusive all their lives. And then the mother gets very ill in her later ages, and the mother wants the child to take care of her. And the child, my patient, will come to me and say, do I have to do this? Do I have to take care of my abusive mother? Or what should I do? And my feeling is you don't have to do anything. You're done with this person if you see fit. You've gone through so much with this person. However, if your intuition tells you want to do it, then you go ahead and do it. And it's interesting to me because most people choose to go ahead and do it, but it becomes a conscious choice instead of a drudgery, instead of being in a victim mode. When you put it to them that way and make it totally non-judgmental, whichever way they go, they don't have anything left to prove to this person, as far as I'm concerned. But when they make the decision themselves, they feel better about it and they feel good about it. And I ask them, because I've known some of my patients for quite a long time. And I said, well, how are you happy with that choice? After the mother is gone? And they say, yes.
So to understand a bit better about empathy and how to do it effectively, let's look at the 3 A's of empathy. I'll give them each of the A's to you, and then you can talk to us about it. The first A of empathy is attitude.
Yes, attitude about empathy is important. If you think it's a useless skill that makes you unduly vulnerable and weak in the business environment and world, that's a pretty negative attitude to have towards it. As opposed to having a positive attitude, saying this is a trait I see, in various people that I admire, and this is the trait I like this in people, and I value this trait, and it's who I want to be. And so then you can develop it in yourself. So the attitude you have, if you just think it's going to make you weak and forget about it, like a lot of people in our society, not a lot, some people in our society, our struggling societies, they're trying to say that empathy is what holds people back. And I think that's for a good reason that holds people back. But it's interesting because if you're sure about where you're at and you have a really respectful attitude towards empathy, and you look at the people you admire, in the world, or the Dalai Lama, Nelson Mandela, the Pope. I mean, empathy is something that's so valued, and it's not being a doormat. It's making very aware decisions and conscious decisions on the basis of who you want to be. So that's the attitude. It can go either way. And if somebody says, no, I don't want to develop empathy, I said, fine, you're happy, go for it. I'm not here to make people develop empathy. Empathy comes from you. It's something, if you're attracted to it in our talk, let's say, it might be a really beautiful direction for you to go in, and learn how to protect yourself a little more so that you don't absorb other people's stuff.
So let's look at the second A, which is attention.
Mm-hmm. Attention is a very spiritual word. The attention that you put on something, where you could bring your whole self into it, which is what I suggest if you're listening to a friend and empathizing with them. You put your full attention on it. You're not looking at your phone. You're not thinking about your dinner. You're not upset about something some guy did. You're 100% with the person. Your attention is with them, but you're not probing. You're not looking into their eyes too intensely. People don't like that. No, there's a chapter in the Genius of Empathy on empathic listening and how to do it, and how to hold your body, the tone of voice that you use when you're talking to people, the amount of space you give them to express themselves. And so the attention is sacred. When you give somebody your attention, it's the most precious thing you can give them. You give them your attention, but not too much, but you're there with them. People want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be valued. That's what people want. And by saying, I have time for you, I'm going to listen to you. You could set a limit for how long you listen. You don't want open-ended listening because people could go on forever. But you have 10 minutes. I have 10 minutes. And I want to listen. I want to help you. If you want to talk about solutions, we can do that too. But sometimes listening is just enough, to listen and then let the person go off and work it out.
And then the third A is adjustment. Tell me about adjustment.
Adjustment. Empathy is a teacher. It's something that you adjust to over time. You learn new things about it. You learn how to treat yourself a little bit better than what you did before. You make adjustments with that. And you make adjustments not to go back to the negative person who is beating yourself up because they think you've done so many things wrong, and shifting, adjusting when you learn how to open to empathy. And I love you. You did the best you could. Nobody could have done better. I love you. We'll work this out tomorrow. It's a tomorrow problem. It's not a today problem. And you deserve to go to sleep. And really be kind to yourself. The voices maybe you never had in your childhood, you have to become that in your own head. And it's very nice. You'll like this.
So let's move on to looking at how to be empathetic but not absorbing other people's stress. And I've stolen from you 5 items that would help you achieve this. And I'm going to give you these 5 items and then you can talk to me about them. The first one is give a little, not a lot.
That's a very important point because empaths overgive and they want to heal the whole world and they want to just give until the person's better. And that's not the proper response. The proper response is to give a little but high quality giving, high quality attention. Be there for someone, for 5 minutes, and then, go about your business. Just say, we listen. This is great. Have a beautiful day. Take what we said and practice. Just a little goes a long way. And that's something empaths don't really get, as they feel like they need to, this, this, and how can I do this? Where can I take you? It's too much, or if a patient is in the hospital, I've seen this with well-meaning empaths, where they just fuss over the person. They're in the hospital bed. They just had surgery. Their legs are up. They're in a bad situation. And the empath is, are you still in pain? Are you better? And like checking every 2 seconds. And the poor person is like, leave me alone. This is too much. But the empath doesn't know it's too much. So a little bit goes a long way.
Set compassionate, guilt-free limits. Sounds very easy to say. I have a suspicion it's harder in practice.
Mm-hmm. It is. But the empath must, and the empathic person must realize this is a must, because you can't get away with not doing this if you want to enjoy your empathy. Because what you don't want to do is keep tuning into other people and absorbing their stresses, their worries, their physical pain. Empaths can also absorb physical pain in the body, which is very troublesome. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be a martyr. And so, you have to learn how to set boundaries. And setting boundaries is based on the belief that everyone deserves the dignity of their own path. Therefore, you stay in your own lane. You don't jump into someone else's lane because they're suffering. You stay in your own lane. You make accommodations. You talk to the person, or you're there for the person. Little goes a long way. But you learn how to say no. No, I'm so sorry. I don't have 45 minutes to talk now. No, but I can give you 5. Can we start with that? And the way you talk to people is very matter of fact. You don't have to apologize for this. You don't have to beg or plead or be guilty about setting a limit. It's saying no is a complete sentence. No, I'm so sorry I can't do it, but I'll be thinking of you. If they say, and this happens occasionally, well, what do you mean you can't do it? What kind of friend are you that you can't listen to me for 2 hours after you come home from a long day of work? What's wrong with you? Why can't you listen to me? Which is crazy, But many empaths just keep listening, which is not what I want you to do. And so you have to say, I'm really tired after work too. And so I don't really have it to give to you right now, but maybe we can hook up later on in the week, and talk about it, and I'll hold good thoughts for you or something like that. And yes, sometimes people will get mad at you, or they'll feel like they deserve all of your attention all the time, but that's not realistic. That's not going to happen.
So I think we need to bring in the third thing now, which is go into unavailable mode. Tell me about unavailable mode.
Yes, that means you don't have to be on call 24 hours a day for your friends or colleagues. As empaths feel they need to, have the phone on. They need to sleep with their phones on. They need to, in case something happens at night. And I don't mean with family members, because that's appropriate if someone's sick to, be available. But it's overgiving, where empaths overgive. And so then they start to get sick themselves, or they get empathic illnesses. It's where empaths can literally take on the illnesses of other people. I mean, I've seen couples who live together, I've seen one person who had heart disease, the husband had heart disease, and the wife started getting chest pains. So when you live together, especially for a long time, you harmonize with each other and you get on the same wavelength. It's really quite interesting. And so without the boundaries, you're becoming them. They're going through a physical illness. your tender heart is taking it on. So you have to know that you can be quite compassionate without taking on the pain or emotional stress of others. You can be quite compassionate, but this is key. You have to let them work this out themselves. You cannot do it for them. This is their emotional path. This is their spiritual path. They have got to develop the muscles. You're not going to make it any better by taking it on, because then you'll have two miserable people instead of one. So it's good to keep a distance. Try to absorb that.
What I say is don't rescue.
Yeah, don't rescue people. I know we want to. I mean, I honestly, I'd love to heal the world. I'd love to heal everyone. I'd love to heal you of your pain. I'd love to heal the depression over here. And I'd love to, but it's not my job. I can't do it. It's not my job. That's not how healing works. We're here on earth to heal ourselves with the help of some beautiful beings, who are here. If you're lucky to find guides and you can accept the help, we need to help one another. And finding the proper helpers is really, a wonderful thing. I'm really for psychotherapy. As I said, I've been in psychotherapy since I've been 16. And all my life, I love it. I love continuing to become lighter and not have issues on me all the time. But yes, you have to learn how to set boundaries and not be apologetic for it. Even if you do feel guilty sometimes, that's okay. If you're guilty, still be kind to the person, but just say, I really need to sleep now. I can't do this. I don't have it in me. And I hope you understand, and I'm so sorry. That kind of thing. But you don't have to beg or plead or get into a big discussion. As empaths get into big discussions, and I don't recommend it, except in the rare case where that's what you both decide you want to do.
So let's move on to the fourth one, which is recognize when you've had enough.
Yeah, right. Enough is enough. Yeah, you get to the point where you just don't want to take it anymore. This is what happens a lot of times with empaths and narcissists in partnership. Or one of the partners, the empath, just gets to the point, I've got to get out of here or else I'm going to die. It gets that bad. I'm going to shrivel up emotionally. Something bad's going to happen to me if I can't get out of here and get some help getting out of here and start my life again. And there's a saying in the book, your heart knows when you've had enough. So I want you to listen to that. Your heart knows when you've had enough. Yes, if you go back, you're just going to get the same old, same old. You're not getting anything different. You're going to get the same thing. And really let that sink in. And I'm so sorry that person couldn't have given you all the love you deserved. And this is where you have to get out of fantasy land. But they can't do it. They've proven that over and over and over again.
And the last one was a bit of a surprise to me, which was meditate and pray.
Yeah. Now, meditation is a wonderful grounding technique, a way to get yourself back to your heart and take a few breaths, focus on something very loving. It could be an image of the ocean or an image of the sky or an image of a little dog. You hold that image and feel your heart opening. And the meditation, that's my primary practice of how I come back to myself. I usually do it at the end of the day. And I light candles and I sit on a cushion and breathe and let the thoughts go by and come into my heart and open up to my empathy and intuition, and usually to connect to nature and hear the nature sounds outside my window.
Does that help you sleep better?
Yes, it does.
So in a moment, we're going to be looking at a letter which looks at the whole subject of empathy and empaths, and we'll be doing that in just a moment.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material and other benefits.
My men's retreat runs from Sunday the 28th of September to Wednesday the 1st of October in the woods just outside Berlin, Germany. Step out of your daily stress. Take stock of where your life is going and deepen your relationship with yourself and other men. One of the reasons everyone feels more anxious is not just the fast-changing world, but how we've become more isolated. In particular, we are cut off from the wisdom and support of other men, mostly because we find it difficult to open up and be truly vulnerable with each other. In my 4-day workshop with a group of like-minded men, we can focus on what it means to be a man today and how we can support our sons to become balanced men. It will be a truly transformative experience, and I would like to share it with you. You can find out more about the beautiful location, the seminar house itself, and the costs on my website, andrewgmarshall.com. Click on the button Men's Retreat. Do it now because we've almost filled half the places.
Podbean, your message amplified.
Ready to share your message with the world? Start your podcast journey with Podbean.
Podbean, the AI-powered all-in-one podcast platform.
Thousands of businesses and enterprises trust Podbean to launch their podcasts.
Use Podbean to record your podcast.
Use Podbean AI to optimize your podcast.
Use Podbean AI to turn your blog into a podcast.
Use Podbean to distribute your podcast everywhere.
Launch your podcast on Podbean today.
You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
So, if you'd like to participate in the program, go to my website, www.andrewgmarshall.com. You'll find the podcast section and go down there to participate in the program, and you'll find a space to send in a letter to us. My partner is incredibly attuned to feelings, which is brilliant and has allowed us to form a close bond. When I have my children stay for the weekend, she's a great friend to them too. However, she can easily get overwhelmed and need time alone, especially as she finds loud noises a real trial. I'm not sure how to explain everything to my young children, 7 and 5, who can take her withdrawal personally. Any suggestions? However, the biggest problem is our social life. She used to find it easier when she drank and took party drugs, but in the past 6 months, she's decided this was no longer working for her. It means that her ability to go out and mix has reduced dramatically. Basically, she would rather stay home, and I support that, but I still want to go out and see our friends. We don't live in the same city. Work keeps us apart. We get together every second or third weekend, so when she's in town, we want to spend as much time together as possible. But a friend will be having a birthday party, and I don't want to miss out. How can I support her without becoming isolated and not getting the social contact I need?
Yes. Oh, very nice. Well, you have to be honest with her. You have to be able to speak from your heart to her, because she's gotten sober, apparently. And I don't know if she's going to a 12-step program, but that could help her to, get more centered and be able to go out in the social world a little bit more. Because she might be an empath as well, because it sounds like if she got sober and suddenly she wants to stay in, that her sensitivities have developed in some way. But it's very important that you don't feel trapped in the relationship and that you're able to say to her, I understand you don't want to socialize, but I really want to go out and to my friend's birthday party tonight, and I'll, come home, see you later. You can't not go, because if you don't go, you're going to get resentful. And so it's important to have empathy for your partner and what she's going through, but also be able to meet your own needs. And also, I know that if you're not living in the same city, you want to, spend as much time as possible, but it's a balancing act. And you have to tell her, I would suggest telling her your dilemma, that you love her and you want to be with her. But I also, have these other needs that you don't have. So let's figure out a way to deal with them. And you do it in a very kind way. You do it in an upbeat way. You don't make it into a big discussion. I wouldn't let it degenerate into some big discussion. But just keep it light, that I love you. It has nothing to do with whether I love you or not. But I really want to go out to my friends' parties occasionally. So that's how I would approach it.
I think one of the problems is we feel we have to be exactly like our partners, that if we want to go out, they have to want to go out. And if we want to stay home, they have to stay home. And this idea that we can be different people and still in love with each other is quite a bit of a revolutionary idea, isn't it?
It is. And I want to tell you, just through my experience with my partner of doing that, it feels so good to come home to him, after I've done something that he doesn't want to do, but he, supports me in doing it. I just love him even more. It's like a great feeling where somebody doesn't try and smother you and say, well, I don't want you to go. I don't want you to leave me here. I don't want that either. But even grow closer as a result of setting these limits.
Any suggestions on how to explain this to younger children so they don't feel that they're doing something wrong when they're just effectively being children?
Do the children want to go out to birthday parties?
No, that it's at the beginning of the letter, he mentioned that sometimes his children were a bit of a trial for his girlfriend, and he's not quite certain how to explain this to the children so they don't feel responsible.
Yes, I think he needs to sit around in a circle with the children and ask them what their feelings are about the girlfriend. And if there are any issues, to figure out how to problem solve them. And make it very matter of fact. Don't make it a totally emotional interaction. Make it very matter of fact. And so you could find out what the children are feeling and why, and then begin to incorporate their needs as well. My sense is with the situation is that the calmer everyone can stay and the more loving and calm people can be with this, it would be very helpful. But the girlfriend, also needs to know how she's triggering them, at some point. But I would deal with one issue at a time. I would not, with the girlfriend, I would not deal with, you going out to the party and what to do with the children and any other issues. I would make them in separate sessions and give some breathing room between each session. You do not want to overwhelm your loved one with requests. One is enough. And then you work through that and you have that success experience. And you might need to fine tune things. She might feel lonely when you go out to your party. And then what do you do? I mean, she's got to learn to work with her loneliness, and she's a big girl. You don't have to baby her in terms of that respect. She's making a decision and that's her choice and that's fine. And you'll be back. And she has to learn to be with herself, which is a beautiful thing to learn how to do.
And I think it's a beautiful idea of yours, one problem at a time. I think we have a tendency when we think we're going to sit down and we're going to do this stuff, we've got to bring everything to the table. And that's just overwhelming. One topic. And maybe it may only be one part of the topic, in fact.
Yeah, do what's needed. Just go small and go slow.
Do a little, not a lot, to paraphrase you from earlier.
That's a secret to empathic communication. You just don't want to blurt everything out. That's not going to help anything.
So we're beginning to get towards the end of our time together. So I need to ask you, what makes your life meaningful?
Every minute, everything that I see, feel, touch. Every morning I get to wake up and have another day. My work has been incredibly meaningful for me over the years and continues to be. I'm a worker. I love to work, in terms of my writings, in terms of being with patients, in terms of myself, learning about myself. I love to work. Love to work. So, and I've learned, to take time other than work to balance that. But the work, is, if I'm going through a hard time or something, if I have my project, I have my work, it's like a lifesaver for me because it connects me to myself. It allows me to be connected to, all of the realities. So work and loving a person, loving my friends, having long-term relationships, connecting. Like many empaths, I value connecting and writing. I've taken a kind of gone out of my comfort level, and the next book that's coming out is a children's book, called The Highly Sensitive Rabbit. And it's about, this sensitive rabbit who everybody makes fun of and how she comes into her power through the love of fellow animals. And they all live in the Sonoran Desert, which is an unusual environment for rabbits, as they usually, in these books, they put them in the forest. But we chose this incredible desert environment with all these exotic animals who are considered different, and how these different animals all come to support each other. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, good luck about that. We're going to continue with our bonus material where we're going to be talking about what is healthy giving, and we'll be doing that in a moment. And if you want to hear the bonus material, you can subscribe directly via Apple or Spotify. If you want to become a supporter of The Meaningful Life, unlock the bonus material this way. Here are the details.
You've been listening to The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. You can follow Andrew on Twitter, like him on Facebook, and please leave a review wherever you consume your podcasts. Making, editing, and distributing The Meaningful Life comes with substantial costs, and we'd like to ask for your help. Visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material for every program, send in a letter to be discussed by Andrew and his guests, and join a community of other people seeking to make their life meaningful. At the gold level, you get even more benefits. Production of The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall is by Michael Dooney. Social media by Madeleine Healy. Sound engineering and theme tune by Sebastian de la Luz Mendoza. And I'm Susie Colick. Please tell your friends and spread the word. Thank you.
When you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself, talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.